We want to thank everyone who's been a supporter of Make It Your Business. And we thought that since we really enjoy doing the podcast, learning more about businesses and business owners, we thought that we would create a daily Make It Your Business. So welcome to our first MIYB Daily, featuring my co-host,
What's
my
up,
business
everyone?
partner, Terrell Patterson.
Yes, with the tight shirt and the non-matching hat, baby. We in the building today.
For those of you that are also fans of Shay and Terrell, you are not so unfamiliar with this.
Listen, I want to thank you for having me on your show, the one and only Shayla Hebron. Everyone, give it up for her.
Now allow me to reintroduce myself. They call me.
On this particular program, we're going to be talking about topics that affect businesses directly, topics that are important to us, things that we would like to share with fellow business owners, CEOs, CFOs, content creators.
Yep.
And we're also going to address lifestyle things as well within this. So, because if you're not your best you, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, health-wise, fitness-wise, nutrition-wise, then you can't perform your best in whatever capacity of business that you serve. So today we thought we'd start with something we know personally, which is the entertainment industry. Rel and I, of course, those of you who aren't familiar with our story, we met 6 years ago working on a series together. I'm a producer, he's an editor, and we actually were a team on a docu-soap series
Yep.
for WeTV. And that's kind of how we decided to start our media company, Beyond the Lens Incorporated and BTL Media LLC, which is a subsidiary of Beyond the Lens. So one of the things that was so important to us is that, of course, just like every other aspect of the country, except, of course, essential workers and essential businesses, entertainment production came to a halt in March due to the pandemic here in the United States.
Yeah.
And as a result, hundreds of thousands of people were immediately out of work, except for some of those who actually serve in post-production, which Rel still does, the nonfiction aspect of television news as well. So all of those persons still stayed employed to be able to give that information to people on a daily basis. So now that the country is starting to reopen,
Yeah.
that means that production will start to come back into fray, which is interesting because this time of year anyway, before there were summer television shows, before there were really no seasons anymore for content, there used to be 2 seasons that new content was actually, I guess you could say this is before streaming.
Yeah.
And honestly, before television realized that people wanted to consume content 365. So outside of films, television came to a halt in May anyway, and people went on hiatus until August when series started filming again. So this isn't something that's new to entertainment. Of course, the strike of 2008 caused production to come to an immediate halt, and of course, any
Was it
national
2008?
yeah.
I thought it was even earlier.
2007, but 2008 is when it really started to take its toll.
Wow.
Well, no, 2007 is when it happened, but it production started back up sometime in 2008, because I don't think they came to contract negotiations until 2008.
You sure? You sure it wasn't 2004?
No, it was 2007. I know, I was in LA at the time.
Oh, okay.
And I knew a few scabs
Oh, okay.
that crossed the line to do reality television. It actually gave birth to the reality television boom. So this is something.
Sorry, real quick. They had a writer's strike and then turned around and had a downturn in the economy?
Yeah.
Damn. Woo, that was rough. That must have been a rough year.
It was a rough few years because, well, everything that happens in this country subsequently hits entertainment a little bit later because people still want to laugh instead of crying in times of, I guess you could say, in times of peril in this country. So that was definitely something that the economic downturn, I don't think, really fully hurt production until about 2009, 2010, after the rest of the country really went through their problems in the economic downturn in 2008.
Yeah.
But we've been reading a lot of literature over the past few days about what production is going to look like, because we know the whole country looks different now as the country starts to reopen. I mean, not everybody is paying attention to the rules, which unfortunately is what makes America great, no pun intended. And one of the things that we're seeing is that in addition to people still having to wear masks to be able to go into stores and other public places, they have to keep, of course, the 6 feet distancing rule to physical distance. So how will production look?
I know.
Coming back into fray. Now, it seems that California will be opening 53 of their 58 counties for production, because we know that that is a very large staple of their economy in that state. They will be opening that looks like within the next 3 weeks. In addition to that, once this happened and people were trying to figure out what production was going to look like, and it's something you and I talked about a lot, being in here, sheltering here in place in New York City, because we know with the city, we're going to be in here for a long time because it's such a dense area in general, and production just kind of exacerbates that. So, and one of the things is that the guilds, all of the guilds and unions, IATSE, SAG-AFTRA, DGA, WGA, PGA, have all basically been speaking in regards to what production is going to look like and what those guidelines are going to look like now that production is going to start opening. Now, as usual, brother figured it out before they did.
Yeah, always. I mean, because
we always got to be the trendsetters.
You know, we got to work twice as hard to get half the reward. So, you know, this brother right here has been working twice as hard as anybody, and for
years.
And he couldn't afford to take a lull in his business, you know. So, I mean, well, let me let you finish talking, because people don't even know who we're talking about yet.
And if you don't know, soon you'll know that it's Tyler Perry.
Yes. Was it TP Studios?
TP Studios came up with a 30-page document and guidelines for how to reopen safely, because, as we know, Georgia had no problem taking out their population and decided to reopen their economy probably before everybody else, even though their case
they were
numbers,
one of the first, right?
One of the first, them in Florida, started to reopen their economy, even though their numbers continue to rise. Unfortunately, I think once this country found out that black people were dying disproportionately at higher rates than anybody else, it was like, oh, okay, let's reopen the country. So Tyler Perry put out this, and I'm just going to glaze over, so Rel and I are going to jump into this sooner than later. He put out a 30-page plan for his cast and crew for his series Sisters and The Oval, which are on BET. He is starting production again in July on TPS Studio Lot, which is the biggest studio in the country. And because he stays woke and on top of what's going on, he wanted to be able to reopen and start production safely and securely for his cast and crew. And one of the things, now granted, this was supposed to be confidential.
I know, it's like written literally on the damn document that we're holding.
But somebody got their hands on it and made it available for Hollywood Reporter. So we do have a copy of it, and I was able to glaze through it this weekend and a little bit more this morning. And one of the things he says in his opening letter is that this affected him even closely because they lost a crew member, Charles Gregory Ross.
Prayers to the family.
He came down with symptoms. Yes, our prayers, we're sending up extra prayers for the family of Charles Gregory Ross. He came down with symptoms a few days after wrapping on another production in Atlanta. This is probably before the country shut down, of course, and he succumbed to the virus. He had been working with Tyler Perry on and off for 15 years. So Tyler also speaks in his opening letter to his cast and crew that with the sobering reality and understanding that African Americans are disproportionately affected by the virus in vast numbers, and since most of his cast and crew are African American, he worked with doctors to come up with a plan to return to work safely. A part of that plan, and I just want to go over that really fast, is that 16 days prior to travel, wherever the cast and crew members are coming from. They will be tested in their hometown and asked to self-isolate before their travel date. That is 16 days prior. They travel to Atlanta on private flights from their respective cities, and they'll be tested from their car upon arrival, where they will be taken in a private car with a masked and gloved car service driver. All of their luggage will be sanitized before loading and unloading upon arrival in Atlanta in the private aircrafts, which will also be sanitized before entry and after loading the passengers and the luggage. After arrival in Atlanta, they will be in a 25-seater pass van, but there won't be any more than 10 people within that van to be able to appropriate for physical distancing.
Yeah.
Now, all cast and crew members will have to wear face masks and gloves at all times.
Yeah.
And they will be the drivers will be tested prior to pickup. When they arrive to the studio, they will be tested before even stepping foot onto the lot.
Don't even breathe on my lot right now, homie.
Also, as a part of that lot, they will all have, he also built housing to, I love this because he thought ahead before anything like this even happened. And we will talk more about this as we go forward with other MIYB dailies, because now you do have to, businesses are going to have to put, unfortunately, a pandemic contingency plan in their business plans moving forward, because this is real. And this is something you don't think about before, but now this is something we have to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
They will be, if they test negative, then they will be allowed on their lot and sequestered into their room until every cast and crew member arrives, is tested, and they will be quarantined for a 14-day period. Now, going forward, at the beginning of each day, each cast and crew member will undergo testing and a temperature check prior to stepping on to their set. The sets are closed sets. They are required to wear, of course, masks and gloves at all times until they have to apply until they receive makeup. That's for cast only and background. Until they receive makeup and hair.
That's crazy.
Of course, all hair and makeup personnel will be wearing masks and gloves with application. If, of course, they do test positive, they will be asked to be removed immediately, or if they test positive prior to getting to there, they will not be allowed on the set. They will be taken to a facility where they will quarantine, and they have to test negatively consecutively after that self-quarantine for 14 days, where they will not show symptoms for 4 days straight and test negative twice. All of this will be from will be administered from Abbott lab testing and PCR nasal labs, which show a 97% accuracy rate. It takes 4 to 6 hours to process a test.
That's not bad.
Now, all of the people that were involved in doing this were Bob Backish, Scott Mills of BET, Bob Backish is of Viacom, SAG-AFTRA, DGA, IAT, SE, Teamsters, Dr. Carlos Del Rio, Dr. Bandukwala, and Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who I'm familiar with, and Mayor Keisha Bottoms, of course, Georgia Film Office and Department of Economic Development were also involved, as well as Hub, USI, EP, Entertainment Partners,
EP,
and many doctors and nurses at Emory Healthcare for their help in devising the plan. Now, just really quick, the dates. Sisters the prep, depending on union and guild guidelines, which they're still awaiting, of course, will be, the tentative prep is June 1st through July 2nd of 2020. Talent and support for Sisters are expected to check in July 3rd. General crew are expected to check in July 6th. Shoot dates are July 7th through July 19th. And Camp Quarantine checkout, as they're calling it, Camp Quarantine, is July 20th. The Oval, same as Sisters in terms of the prep. Talent and support are checking in July 24th. So you see how they're giving it a 4-day date between both programs. General crew, July 27th, and shoot days are July 28th through August 9th of 2020.
Wow.
So yes, let's talk about this plan because this is extremely thorough, and I just glazed over parts of it.
Yeah.
Because it was just way too much to. I mean, oh, and another thing too, cast and crew will be in full hazmat suit and medical PPE. Also, another thing I found interesting, there's a breakdown of quarantine participants for the filming, which is going to change the whole how everything is going to look different in a post-pandemic era, where not even because we're not really out of the pandemic, but there will be a safety coordinator. Safety coordinators are basically now people that, you know how you have the green representatives on sets. You have people who are sexual harassment personnel. So this is kind of a new role that's being asked to be implemented now on location for film and series. A person occupational risk prevention team. That is 3 people.
Okay.
4 medics, which is pretty standard depending on how big the production is. 2 COVID-19 specialist registered nurses. And then I found this interesting, 3-person leisure activity crew, because since they're all being quarantined together, they can't go off lot and go into the city of Atlanta or other outskirts of Georgia to be entertained. They have to stay there for the entirety of the filming. And so now they have a 3-person leisure activity crew who's going to come up with things like bingo night, and they're going to have movie nights. And
dope.
There's going to be proper seating for them that still emphasizes social distancing. And I'm sure when they have their meals, their lunch, their breakfast, lunches, and dinners, those are going to be physically distanced too. Maybe we're talking about 3 to 4 people a table, so they're separated 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
And of course, a 10-person cleaning crew, which I think might be standard, but it's probably even more important because they're going to sanitize everything in the beginning of the day and at the end of every filming day and any facility that people use within there. Also, every person has their own room, which might not always be standard.
Yeah.
And, well, actually, the bigger the production, yes, you typically have your own room, private bathroom facilities as well, which will be cleaned every day. And you are not allowed to be in another person's room while filming. So this really is almost like a self-isolation. I mean, the only contact you'll have with people is when you're filming. And crew and cast members will only be allowed to take off their mask when they're filming.
Gotcha. Wow.
So I just think this is fascinating and just in general with location, because we were even talking about this before. I mean, you have love scenes.
Yeah.
You have, so the importance of testing, the importance of social distancing before and after filming is so important to make sure that people stay safe and that they don't contract this airborne virus.
Yeah. Well, for me, you know, when I first came across this, of course, you know, you commend Tyler Perry for everything that he's done prior to this raises like alert to him, because, you know, we make fun of him. Sometimes he can become the butt of the joke in production because we're like, oh, his shows aren't that good, or it speaks to a specific audience, as he liked to put it. But when you really look at what he's done, you really look at the totality of his career and say that he really worked harder than everybody else. He really put out more energy, and he really showing now. And I think the story within the story with this is how much he cares about his people and about, you know, specifically Black people, because he understands that this affects that demographic, his demographic, our demographic, more than anybody. And I just look at you know, my experience in production companies, your experience with production companies, you know, all it being in reality versus narrative. But I look at the fact that he cares. And I think when you really put your talent first, you put your audience first, when you're really focusing, like his audience, for example, you know, like, not to stray away from the pandemic aspect, but I like to look at like the nuts and bolts of what this is on a macro level. He really always showed that he cared about his audience.
Right.
Like, no matter how bad the programming was for us, because we're a different type of audience, different type of demographic. I'm not an old church lady, but he made sure he continued to put out a product that they can appreciate. So, and now with his cast and crew, now he making sure that they are in a safe facility, like, you know what that means for crew, like not even just the cast. I know cast, sometimes actors get pampered and they get all type of writers and all
Oh yes, they have
all
writers,
all
where,
types of things, you know,
there's a specific
services, you know,
services
pampered.
that they like and food that they like.
But crew typically gets, you know, like, you know, you're working 16 hours, you get some crackers.
Yeah, it's well, you get, they have craft services on sets like that, but
even it's not like what the actors would, you know,
Right.
especially an A-list actor could
Right.
get. So, you know, the fact that he's actually putting so much attention into his crew shows you like his mentality about putting people first. And I think
Right.
a lot of companies, not just production companies, you know, that want to know what to do coming out of this pandemic, or what to do during this pandemic, or what to do in general, is start putting your people first. Start putting your customers, your employees, especially your employees. A lot of people think the customer's always right, and they treat their employees like crap. You know, if you treat your employees better, they'll treat the customers better. If you
Right.
treat your crew better, they'll work harder. They'll work the 18 hours that you
Right.
want them to do without complaining. They'll take lower rates because they are treated better on set. So with what he's doing, I think it's commendable because he's actually showing people how to put people first. And, you know, and especially with this being safety, like this is not like a game, you know what I mean? Like people are like sneezing and coughing one day and then dropping dead the next. So, and maybe his crew won't be immediately affected because, you know, he can even say, oh, most of the people I hire are young, they'll be okay. And I'm sure a lot of production crews will say that. I'm sure a lot of production companies will be A-okay with, well, you know, I'm sure, you know, we'll take the bare minimum precautions.
Right.
But with them, with him, he's like, no, I don't want you to be affected, and I don't want your family to be affected. And he, you know what I mean? And he understands that this is not just, oh, one person can get sick. This is your family. You can get sick. Your family can get sick. Your friends can get sick. You know, it passes through. I mean, obviously, this is how this disease passed around. This virus passed around. So, you know, I think it's very commendable what he's doing. And he has I'm, you know what I mean? Like, I know I made fun of his movies and TV shows, and I probably still will.
Right.
But I won't make fun of him.
No.
And I have to commend him. And, you know, when Beyonce, bow down, bitches. Like, I gotta, I'm bow down to him. So, you know, but what do you take from, you know, this confidential document, which that's something else we could talk about.
How the brother stuff get leaked?
How his stuff get leaked.
Because you know when the guidelines come out from all the unions and guilds, it's going to just go to members only.
Yep.
And not be leaked. But that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. So what do you take from Tyler Perry's confidential document for quarantine?
I think one of the things that I actually take from it, you can see that he's looking out for his people.
Yeah. Facts.
And I think that's something that still applies to certain types of production, just not all. Specifically, nonfiction.
Yeah.
I feel like nonfiction has a lot of abuses that are still happening, which we can talk about in another program, that I think is being brought more to light during this pandemic, because that's the whole landscape's gonna look different too when people return, because first of all, one of the things that has proven, since there are still series being completed and films being completed, is that people in post-production can work from anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's something that, and because a lot of them have to be technically inclined, as long as they have access to the equipment they need, then that they can do those services out of their home. Now, this is something I knew for years.
Yeah.
Now, you know, it's funny, even early on in my career, I can remember online editors specifically who, for those who don't know what that term is, those are people that typically complete the product in terms of the mixing, the color correcting. They do a lot of the
polish, the spit shine on it.
The spit shine on the product. I knew a couple that both of them were online editors working from home.
Yeah.
In their Hollywood Hills house. So
I work from home too if I was out there.
So I know that is something that happens.
Yeah.
You know, they have the same deadlines. It's just a matter of them meeting those deadlines. And if it's now that it's proven that can happen,
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a second. That's something that I feel like a lot of companies have to start looking at moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it could save them cost on a lot of things for them as well. But
Yeah.
we'll get into that later. In terms of his plan, I love the fact that he's shooting for 12 days only on each program.
Yeah.
I think that's really, now granted, he has a lot of things that he's basically thought out very delicately and very detailed for a while in planning this lot in general.
Yeah.
Not just the housing, but also he has sets, and they're closed sets in terms of he has like you would see on any lot. But with his, in particular, he already has his sets in place.
Yeah.
Places that look like somebody's bedroom, places that look like somebody's, for the Oval, looks like the
Yeah.
Oval Office. So those things are already in place, so you can account for 12 days of filming.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's great because you're getting your people in and out to do the work, which it should be anyway. I think sometimes budgets and time are a little bit more allotted, depending on what the actors themselves, if you have a lot of A-listers, they may have a lot of other commitments and a lot of other projects they're involved in, so you have to kind of play chess in terms of how you're going to move all your pieces and when people can be on location and film with particular other co-stars and when they can't. So you may not have the luxury of filming for just 12 days, but because he does, I think that's brilliant, and that was very well thought through. And I just love the fact that he's really taking into account the safety of his people. One of the things I learned early on when I got into production was if your crew is fed and happy, they'll work for you and work at the highest level for you as long as they possibly can. And somewhere along the line, some people lost that. And I think this might have been
Didn't
a lot
even
of
know
people
it
lost
existed.
that. I think a lot of people realize that they have to readapt that in this time of the quarantine.
Yeah.
Or this time of the pandemic, I should say.
Yeah, fall back in love with taking care of your crew. Absolutely. And I think I hope, people, crew don't get taken advantage of because they're so desperate to get work because of the lack of work and being out of work and freelancers and that they will allow companies to take advantage of them. I hope that crew members will, union is always a funny word, but let's say come together with a common goal to be treated better within these companies. I hope that's what they learn. And I hope the companies like you were talking learn the same thing so they don't have to put the pressure on them. They don't have to threaten a strike. They don't have to go through these things where they realize like we both need each other. The crew needs the production company needs the crew, and we should be treated thus like that.
Well, that's something I wanted to actually talk a little bit more with you about and ask you about. How do we think it is going to look on both sides of the coin? Because, as you said, people who don't know how production looks in terms of behind the scenes, and this is every aspect, post, and pre-production, production, and post. If nothing's being filmed, they're not working. So even if they were consistently getting work, this is still an industry where people technically live paycheck to paycheck.
Absolutely.
So depending on how much they make, or how much they have in the piggy bank, so to speak, or at what level they are in their career, it's still a very paycheck to paycheck industry. So when all that halted, people weren't working. So because you have to physical distance now on sets, because you have to physical distance in post-production facilities as well, there's going to be a lot of people clamoring for the same positions, more than there already was. It was already more demand for the work than there was supply. Yeah. So how do you think that's going to look coming now out of the pandemic?
Still going to definitely be more demand than supply. Like that's not going to change. I mean, even more so probably. You know what? And this is just my opinion, and I'm gonna step out on a limb and say the companies that like Tyler Perry Studios, the companies that show that they care about their crew, that want to give them opportunities to grow, that want to make sure they're in safe environments, I feel like there'll be vastly more growth in their companies. And I think the ones that take advantage of crew, because they'll still be out there. They're not going anywhere. I don't want to sit here and say, oh, everyone's going to learn and be like kumbaya, and they're going to be like, what, you want a raise? Sure, buddy, I'll give you a raise. Like, I don't, you don't want to get fired on the spot anymore? Sure, we'll give you, a month in advance, and if we have to let you go, we'll give you 2 weeks pay. Like, yeah, no, there'll still be shitty companies and shitty companies no matter what.
Yeah.
That's just who they are by nature. That's their company culture. But I think the pandemic will truly expose those companies as being shitty companies. And I think the better companies will be able to retain employment better. And I think that'll be one of the biggest changes. So when you hear, because, with the, not to get too much into this, but because there's social media, because there's Facebook groups, because people are talking, they'll know, well, this company treated people like this during a crisis, and this company treated them great during a crisis. You should work for them. Or when you're looking for recommendations, so the better talent is going to go to the companies that treated people during this crisis better, and the other companies are not going to get the better talent, and then eventually they'll,
they'll start to get phased out.
If we're playing the long game. Like, they'll make their money, they'll make their quotas in the short term, but in the long game, they'll, in my opinion, like you said it best, they'll get phased out.
Now, how do you feel post-pandemic? Are you going to, in terms of, because you have a company that's probably going to want you to return physically into an office space?
That. I mean, like I'm not going. If I can. One, I got sick. So,
right.
So I have a whole different outlook on this. I have my grandfather's still alive. My mother, she's not that old, but you have older parents. We live in an apartment complex. Like, there's things like when you look at putting me back into a situation where I can get sick and spread it to people that I love and care about, or you can get sick from me and spread it to people that you love and care about, when I could do exactly what I've been doing, and that's working efficiently from home. Like, that.
I think that applies to so many different industries too. Like, that's the beauty of technology and the beauty of things that we are seeing. I feel like if you can create content, if you can finish products, and do any work remotely, I really believe every company should be trying to figure out. Because one of the things I do love about entertainment in general is it is an industry that has to learn how to quickly adapt. Yeah. Whether it does it successfully or not is another thing. But I feel like for the most part they do. Yeah. Everyone adapted when streaming happened. Yeah. And everyone adapted with the protocols in the strikes, and of course when things had to be completely halted, people did find a way to still entertain. Absolutely. So I feel like the things that we should come out of this is learning is that you can still find a way to provide what you need to provide, and every company should have an element of that can be done digitally, uploaded from other locations in order for it to reach their consumer. I agree. So well said. We want to thank you all for joining us for our inaugural MIYB Daily. Yes. We're your hosts, Shayla Hebron and Terrell Patterson. Hey, everybody, I advise you, if you haven't listened to Making Your Business podcast or Shay Goes to School podcast, give it a listen. It's dope. She interviews some really awesome people. Other than that, this has been awesome. It's been great being with my queen here. And hopefully... My king. Hopefully, coming to America reference for those who don't know. So hopefully, we can keep this up. We'll try to do it daily. It might be every other day. We got to see how long these edits take. Post-production life, working from home. But no, I'm super excited for us to bring more content to y'all. So check us out, and that's a wrap from me. We want to thank you. Oh, I'm not going to rap. No, sorry, no rapping. I rap and sing in our Shay and Ronald story, so you guys have to check that one out, because I got some musical talents that y'all know. You don't know. If you don't know, you'll soon know. Oh, Lord.